Okay, let's start with the wing this time. Now, if you remember correctly, we have it split into two parts. Now, I just want to fix the angle that we had between the two. So with my pivot set to active element, I'm just going to rotate it a tiny bit to continue this tangent that we had with the first part. I'll also scale it down just a smidge on the z-axis. Now for the cockpit area, we're not going to do the cockpit today, but I still want to create the outline of it and kind of prepare the surface for making the cockpit. So I'll just slide this one over and move it up just to kind of get rid of this little bump that we had before. Now I will also delete the vertices of our curve network, just so we can see better what the actual shape will be. I'll slide this one over just to get this part a bit narrower. Then we need to figure out what we're going to do with this loop. So I'll select this vertex and this one, and let's see if we can just make a triangle and get away with it. Slide this one here just to get a cleaner line. And now maybe if we select this whole loop, set my pivot to bounding box center and then extrude it and scale it. That way we get a protective loop all around this part and the triangle is not on the front line anymore. Now I'll check if beveling can fix this area, but it doesn't seem like it. So we'll need to do a bit more work. I'll just reslide those to get the surface back to how it was. And I will select the loop on the inside here, and let's see if we can bevel this part and then this edge. That way the bevel runs the whole length. And let's slide this closer and see if it helps. Now, adding one here definitely will solve our problem, at least for now. But you can see that the loop runs a bit too far. And to fix that, instead of adding the loop right now, I will delete this face here and then add the loop. That way we won't get fix the triangle that we had. Now I'm making a quad with it. And we don't have a loop that runs the whole length of the plane. And I will select those vertices and move them up, because when we scaled it down, they moved down as well, and that's not what we want. Now I'll just reslide those closer to this part here. And let's do the same for that, just because I want this part to be very tight. Now if I select all of those here, I just want to move them away because I want to get back that circular shape that it had in the beginning. Now you can see here that it forms this little extrusion, and that's fine, that's how the reference looks. But maybe we can make it a bit tighter. So I'll delete this face here. And we'll do the same, but with one, actually, we'll need to delete this one here. And then I will add one loop on the inside and create a triangle here before recreating quad. Just because I wanted to kind of tighten this area. And now you can see we have a much cleaner shape and a much more defined look. I'll create one triangle at the bottom and then fill up the face. And actually, let's try to flip this around and see if we put the quad in the bottom instead of at the top. I think that's better. Now you can see we still have an issue with the wing, because one, they're not connected together, and we don't have the same number of loops on both sides. So that will be another issue before we can fill them together. Now I will add a loop right in the center, right over here. Actually, let's dissolve that loop because it's not on top, but it is at the bottom. So for now, we're not gonna touch it. Okay, so now we want to create this kind of little appendage that will go fix itself onto the thruster. And to do that, I'm thinking that I'm gonna kind of brute force my way into it. So I'll select the vertex on top, at the end of the wing, sorry. Then I will extrude them back and then move them towards the thruster. And you can see that I kind of shape them into how the thruster surface is. So kind of at this angle. Then I will delete this edge on the thruster and add one loop over here. Then I will delete this face here. Actually, let's only delete the face. That way we can add 2 loop cuts on this edge that we preserved. Space them apart if needed. And then merge at last. Now we'll need to move them to kind of recreate our circular shape. But before, I want to connect them together here. Fill those 2 faces here. And let's see how this looks. And yeah, this is pretty nice. You can see that we created this kind of fixation onto the thruster. And for now it was pretty easy, but the hardest part is coming soon, and that is kind of getting back our circular shape. And now I extruded the vertex here under it, but I'm gonna delete it because this is not going to be the best way we can do that. So I'll slide those 2 vertex further back. Just gonna do a little tweak to the shape, just moving them outward and inward to kind of get a smoother transition. Then I'll connect those 2 together, add loop cut to match the one we have on the wing, sorry, and then I will fill those 2 faces, just like that. And maybe this vertex will be able to kind of be used to create the underside, just like this. Let's see how this looks. And this is not too bad. Now we have some twisting happening, but maybe it's only because we don't have enough loops on the wing. We'll check that later. So we need to add 2 loops to this area. And what I mean by brute forcing my way into this is just adding 2 loops here and placing them manually. I'll just slide those over just to help a little bit with distributing that geometry. And let's refill that area before sliding those 3 vertices down. And let's move that outward. And slide that back just a little bit more. And now you can see that the circle is pretty bumpy. And to fix that, we may need to select this whole circle and then do a loop tool circle. But for now, I'll try some more to replace it manually. Now you can see that this area was pretty bumpy, so to fix that, I'll select this whole loop, slide it down, and then slide it up again. Let's do the same for the bottom, trying to distribute the geometry a bit more evenly. That way, when we do a circle using the loop tool add-on, it's not going to throw the vertices all around the place. So I just did the loop tool circle, like I said, and you can see that it moved it outward, which is not exactly what we want, but we can maybe fix that using the second circle. And you can see that our vertexes are a bit twisted. So I'll delete the top, the extremity circle, And then for this one, maybe we can just rotate it. So I'll try to rotate it on the y-axis, just to kind of get all of those vertices into a nicer angle. And then we'll need to scale it down, because we could see that at the top at least, it was getting wider, which is not what we want. Then I will extrude it one more time. And that's pretty good. Now, these are the trickier parts of this plane. Definitely the transitions between round parts and very sharp edges and stuff like that. By the way, the workflow is very similar for cars, so basically you can model any vehicle from this point. Just use the same method of modeling parts separately and then connecting them. So I'll just slide that over. And yeah, that plane is starting to look really nice. We really have something going on right now. Now maybe this needs to be smoothened up a bit by reducing the bevel. But for now, I'll just duplicate that edge and then move it at the center, because I want to use this exact shape for the top of this dorsal fin. Of the rudder, I guess it's called. So I'll just slide vertices around, then move them closer to the mirror axis, and move them until they clip with the mirror plane. And just like that, we have the top of our rudder. I'll just scale it until it fits the blueprint. Like so. And let's delete the vertices of our curve network. I'll select all of the vertices we just created, extrude them down, and then I will select all of the ones at the back and move them. I don't want to scale it because I still want to preserve the rounded part, so it's the same length all around. So I'm just gonna move them manually using G instead of scaling them. Okay, now I want to make the tail a bit wider. So to do that, I'll select all of the vertices, set my pivot to active element, and with the vertex on the mirror axis, I'll just scale it on the X axis. Now I'll select the bottom vertices and slide them using G twice and then C on my keyboard. Then I will add a loop cut right to where you can see that the angle changes on the blueprint. And then selecting the extremity vertex as my pivot point, I'll scale it on the y-axis and then bevel this edge, just to kind of get this shape over here. And let's select those and move them on the x-axis again. And selecting those, I'll move them on the x-axis again, just to not make the tip so narrow. Now for filling the top, it's pretty simple. Let's just extrude that, remove the bevel, and then fill the faces like so. Now that is pretty nice, but we still need to add a bit more detail to that area. So let's make it just a bit wider, because I want to make some room to create a groove that will go on this side. So I'll just make this bit wider. And yeah, this plane is really coming along together. Just looking for areas that we can improve or that we should finish and that are pretty easy to work on right now. And here I think we need to add a loop that will follow the intake. So I'll delete that face and then add the loop and slide it really close to this intake here, and then slide those vertices further back. And then I will delete, actually, let's slide this one here to kind of create this 45-degree angle, then add the loop on the inside face of the intake. Slide this one further just to kind of get back the angle that we had before. And then we're going to do a merge at last. Just like that. And now we have a loop that goes around the intake. I mean, I keep calling it an intake, but the air doesn't get in this lower part, it just comes out of it, I guess. And now you can see that the more we model, the more I spin around the model. And that's usually a sign that we did a good job. So I'll just select the inner loop of this part here. And actually, I was thinking of extruding it, but not for now. I think we should continue this loop that we had running around. So I'll remove the bevel and see if we can kind of bypass it in a way. And this is definitely not a solution. And maybe if we remove the bevel here, we will get rid of that and we can fix this issue just sliding loops around. And so I will select the edges at the base here, right until they meet the other beveled edge, and then I will bevel them. That way we only have those two corners to tighten without needing bevels, just using loops. So I'll delete this face here just in provision that we may need to add more geometry to this area and I don't want the loop to spread. So I'll just add one loop here to kind of tighten this crease that we had going on. Then slide this one closer over there. And let's get ourselves a triangle and a quad, just like this. Then let's see how far we can push this with bevels or creases. So with crease you can definitely see that we need to select more edges if we want to get a convincing result. But maybe by just sliding this loop closer to the corner, we can get something sufficiently sharp. Now this is not bad. We can definitely work with this. And I will delete this face on this side here, just so when I had the loop it's not kind of closing, but I want to delete this face as well. So on both sides we'll have this face just to isolate the loops we're gonna add. So I'll add one on top here and then do a merge at last. And then those two edges, you can probably just create a triangle. And the quad. Just it's a flat surface, so triangles are no big deal here. And yeah, this is Much nicer than what we had before. Although we can probably just try to slide it around to kind of get a smoother transition in this place. Perfect. Now let's get back to the wings. So I'll select the loop on the, let's call it the fuselage part. I'm just trying to understand what the shape looks like and how does it go from this one to this one here. Okay, so with this loop duplicated, I'm just gonna compare to what the shape transitions do. And you can see that it's pretty similar so I'll delete the loop because we won't need it. And then I will delete this loop. And then I'll select the other part, duplicate it, move it on the x-axis. Actually, let's not even duplicate it. We may just be able to kind of extrude it. So I'll add one loop at the top to match the number that we have on the bottom because we know that we're gonna need to fill those. Then I will duplicate it because of this dent in the middle that is annoying me quite a bit. Then I will extrude it on the x-axis, move it up, scale it. Let's scale it right here. Actually, let's see how many vertices we have over there, and then we're gonna match the number we have on this part. So basically we just want to be able to bridge those two. So just make sure you have the same number of vertices on both sides. So I needed to add one more loop here. And I'll just slide those to smooth out the shape. And then select, we can try to just bridge them. Don't forget the edges at the extremities, and then bridge edge loop. And if the result works for you, that's perfect. In this case, it worked quite nicely. And now the only issue is that we didn't do it with this edge loops. So I'll just delete that edge. That way we have one single surface that spans the whole length. I will add one loop cut in the center to get this shape. Actually, let's dissolve that loop. We won't need it for now. Okay, add one loop really close to the frame to kind of tighten this transition, this connection part. And yeah, for now this is good. We'll take care of that dent a bit later. And that later moment I was talking about, well, it's pretty much now. So I'll just add the loop right to where this transition happens. And let's do the same. Actually, let's just try to get it pretty straight. So we may need to flip it or scale it. Let's avoid scaling it just because that way we don't deform the angle of the wing. Now with this loop selected, I will bevel it using Ctrl B this time. That way we can have a loop, another loop next to it. Actually, let's not bevel it. I want to scale it to make it flat at least before beveling it. Just like that. And I will delete all of the faces around here. So what I'm thinking of doing is selecting adding a loop that will allow me to select all of the vertices in front of it and just move them outward on the y-axis. So that's what I'm gonna do. Just move all of those closer to the front. Okay, so I figured out a better method of doing this part. And so I'll select this loop here, slide it right to where it meets the other one. And then we'll delete the other one. And yes, I know it sounds crazy and I'm sorry for making you do these extra steps. Now I'll select the vertices at the end. And we will basically just extrude them on the y-axis. Just like that. And then select those vertices, scale them down just to make it a bit more tapered, then select all of this loop. Actually, let's slide this one down and move this one up, just to kind of get back the nice circular shape we had. And now let's count the number of vertices we have on this one. Or edges, doesn't matter. And now check how many you have. And you may need to add one extra loop at the front. So this is how many I have, and let's check how many we have on the other side. Don't forget to select the caps and then select this loop. Don't forget those, and then bridge edge loop. Let's see if it works. And yeah, pretty much flawlessly. And now you can see that the kind of dent or extrusion doesn't appear for now. But if we add a loop cut and slide it really close on both sides, then we have something quite nice. But maybe we can do that using bevels. So let's try it out. So I'll select these edges on the contour or whatever you want to call that, and let's bevel them and see how it looks. And it's pretty decent, except we need to continue this beveled loop for the whole length. Let's dissolve this one and see if we can increase the bevel radius to its maximum. That way we have the least amount of visible line going on. Now it's not appearing at all, which is pretty reassuring. But also I don't like to rely on bevels on these areas, simply because if we add too much details, then it can become unreliable. But for now, let's keep it that way, and we may just rework it in a few minutes if I change my mind. Now for those, let's make this radius a bit bigger. I want it to be a bit smoother. So I'll select all of those edges and just crank up the bevel just a bit. Perfect. Now I want to move this up just a tad to kind of make the tip of the wing a bit thicker. And that may allow us to also make our bevel bigger. Now for this part I still want to tighten that corner, so I'm gonna add a loop. Just like that. Okay, let's start the last element I want to model today, and that is finish the tail. I'll just add a loop cut right to this part where it turns black at the top. Then I will hide the rest of the plane and add the loop cut over here. Let's remove the bevel that we added earlier and then select the two vertices at the end and slide them down to create this curvature. Now I'm insetting all of the faces on the side. Like so. Actually, let's move them backward that way. Just to get a sharper edge along this side, this direction. Now I'm gonna slide this up just to get a bit of cleaner geometry. And then I'll slide those back. Actually, let's dissolve this loop at the center. And slide this one back to sharpen that corner. Now I'm gonna add a loop over here. And then move that really close to the corner. Now, selecting those middle faces here. Actually, we're just gonna need to create this kind of crease on the side. So I'll select this loop in the center here and move it on the x-axis. Just a bit, like that. And then on the y-axis to move it closer to the other loop. Now selecting those middle faces and these as well. Actually, let's deselect the top one. And slide this one down. Perfect. So with those I will inset them once again. Just a tiny bit. And then move them out on the x-axis just to create this kind of indent on the side that we're gonna then bevel, just like that, to get this shape. Well, actually it's not the shape that I want, and it's not really the shape that's on the reference, so let's reshape that. Let's slide that back and slide this loop as well. So just to kind of create this crease, but make it smoother, make it less apparent. Already it's a bit nicer, a bit closer to the reference, but not perfect. So select those two edges. And I just removed the bevel from here, and I'm merging those vertices at the corner. That way I have a loop that goes around the corner, and then I'm gonna bevel these edges. Let's remove. Let's just make it tighter at least. See what it looks like. And you can see that it's bending upward, which is not what I want. To correct that, maybe we'll need to re-bevel this. But even then, it's not giving the result I was hoping for. So I'm gonna remove the bevel on this corner loop. And move this one inward just a tad. Actually, let's remove it back to the outside and add a loop vertically to tighten the corner at the back, and slide this one to again make it tighter. Not so tight because we were getting this kind of crease in the corner, which I really don't want. And I'm going to bevel the spine here, the edges. And let's do the same for this one and see what it looks like. Actually, let's just dissolve it instead, to not have so many different changes of angle. done for those, let's remove the bevel as well. And slide this one towards the front. Add a loop at the bottom, just until you see that change of angle that we had before. So just slide there and then scale it up just a bit on the y-axis and delete the bottom portion. For now we're gonna keep it like this, that way it's not connecting with the body yet. Now I'm going to delete this face here, add a loop, and then move it on the x-axis. That way we get this nice gradient that I was looking for earlier. And now if this triangle is causing us issue, we're gonna need to rework this area. Let's see if we can bevel. Maybe this will help. And what if we add a loop cut here? Actually no. I'm going to merge this triangle earlier and then delete the triangle by merging the bottom vertex as well. And dissolve this loop. Just to add a new one, I'm not sure what I was thinking here. Sorry for that. It happens. And yeah, this is pretty nice. With my pivot set to active element, turning on clipping, then I will scale that on the x-axis just to make it thicker. Okay, now I'm gonna press Alt-H to show up the rest of the plane. See what we're gonna do with that. I'll extrude, let's extrude the bottom. And don't forget to set the bevel for the edges over here. And for this horizontal loop as well, where the angle change happens. Perfect. Actually, not perfect. Let's see what this artifact is about. And yeah, it looks like we have a face in the center here. Let's turn off the visibility of the mirror to see what happened. And yeah, let's just delete this edge and see if it fixed the issue. Actually, we had a whole loop in the center here. So I'm not sure when it happened, but maybe you didn't have this issue on your side. So no big deal, I'm just going to delete it and check if everything is okay now. Perfect. Actually, not perfect, we need to fix this one, but quite an easy fix. Now our plane is really close to being done. Well, the shape of it at least, and after that it's only adding rivets and cutting panels, so it's gonna be the easy part. So I'm just going to do a few tweaks to the shape here just to get it a bit more cool looking, a bit more pleasing to the eye. I'll just move that up. Now this is pretty good. Now this concludes this episode, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.